Hey guys, Alex here from Trademate Sports, and today I'm going to talk about whether it's possible to win from sports betting without any closing line value. What is closing line value, or CLV? Well, it refers to the final odds offered by a bookmaker right before the event begins. In most cases, these closing odds are the most accurate assessment of an event's true probability, due to the large volume of information and betting activity leading up to a game. The goal in sports betting is to consistently place bets that are bigger in odds than the closing line, and that signals that you are most likely a sharp sports bettor and will win in the long term. CLV is very important, but are there instances where you can win at sports betting without it? Are there times when CLV matters a lot less? The answer is yes, and this video will explain 4 times when CLV either doesn't matter or matters a lot less.
It is a scam when you don't allow everyone to operate on fair terms.
We are the Robin Hoods of sports betting. We take something back from the rich bookies and enable our customers to beat them instead.
Reason number 1 is inefficient markets. So if I'm betting in a really big league, let's just say the English Premier League, where there's millions of dollars being poured into these markets, billions in some case, to come up with the fair price of an outcome between, let's just say, Arsenal versus Manchester City. There will be millions and millions of dollars being poured into this market, which allows for really efficient odds to be created because you've got the opinions of sports bettors around the world, and most importantly, the sharpest sports bettors around the world. But not all markets are efficient, especially the smaller ones. So, for example, might be an extreme example, but the Icelandic Football League. That football league is not going to be as efficient, that market is not going to be as efficient as the English Premier League. Why? Because there's much less money being poured into these markets because the limits are much smaller than the English Premier League. So because there is less money to be bet, it means that the biggest sports bettors are really interested, which means that the odds will not be as efficient because not all the brains in the world are coming together to form a price. You could also say the same thing about prop markets, like first goal scorer, anytime goal scorer. Yes, these markets are reasonably efficient, but they're not as efficient as bigger markets where you can bet tens, if not millions of dollars down at the sharp bookmakers. So if you're beating the closing line of a less efficient market, it means a lot less than if you're beating the closing line of a efficient market like the Premier League. So, like I said before, if you bet Arsenal to beat Manchester City at 2.0 and it closes at 1.8, that's a very good bet. But if you take that exact same example and put it into the Icelandic Football League, you get 2.0, it closes 1.8. That closing line value means a lot less, just because the market is a lot less efficient and those numbers don't have the same weight to them as a massive league like the English Premier League. Before I get into my next 3 reasons as to where CLV doesn't matter, it's important to know that the next 3 examples are a lot more rare in terms of where CLV doesn't matter. Number 1, inefficient markets is the number 1 cause most of the time for where CLV doesn't really matter. So just keep in mind that number 1 is the most important point of this video. Reason number 2 is market fakes. Now, what does market fakes mean? It means sending the line at the time on a particular sporting game in the wrong direction on purpose in order just to get a bigger number. So why would sports bettors do this? In some cases, one sportsbook controls where the odds go. For example, a sharp bookmaker in most cases. So if they can affect where the sharp bookmaker moves, that can sometimes move every single bookmaker or a lot of bookmakers around the world. So if they send the bookmaker that everyone moves off in the wrong direction, then the other books will follow and they'll be able to bet even more down at a bigger number. So these kind of examples lead to market distortion and, market fakes. So it means that at that current time, when the sports bettor has sent the market in directionally, their opinion, the wrong way, then there's going to create instances where the market is distorted and the market is not efficient. So at that point in time, CLV doesn't really matter. Even though it's not exactly closing line value, at the time it's just pure line value. This will most likely happen earlier in the week or hours before a sports game, so it might not affect the closing line at all, but in some way it distorts the market at a particular point in time. This is less likely to happen in big leagues just because the limits are so big that it's hard to move the market hugely. You have to pay a bigger price to move the market in the wrong direction. It's probably more likely to happen in smaller markets. But nonetheless, market distortion or market fakes can lead to the closing line not being as efficient as it normally is. Reason number 3, the market lacks information. And once again, this most likely is going to happen in smaller leagues where there's not as much publicity about these smaller leagues, which leads to big pieces of information that can affect a line to be completely missed. But it can happen in big sports. For example, it happened to me when I was betting the UFC about 2 years ago, and there was a fight between TJ Dillashaw and Aljamain Sterling. And the market had not factored in that TJ Dillashaw had a really bad shoulder injury going into that fight. And within seconds of the fight starting, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, TJ Dillashaw injured his shoulder, dislocated it, and he was unable to fight anywhere near his full potential. So I'm sure if the market was able to find out that TJ Dillashaw had a really bad shoulder injury going into that fight, the odds might have been a bit more be able to represent that a bit more, because from memory, he was about 2.5, something around that odds range. And if people knew that he had a really bad shoulder injury that could potentially get, injured and, make his performance even worse than it already was, his odds would have been much bigger. These kinds of examples where CLV doesn't matter as much, most likely only going to show up in individual sports, because let's just say that Bukayo Saka for Arsenal has a major injury. He starts, goes down in the first 5 minutes. At least there's other players that you can bring on, maybe not to Saka's level, but it's not going to cause a huge swing in odds to, make Arsenal completely unfavorable in the markets. Whereas in individual sports like UFC, MMA, tennis, these kind of sports, if the only player playing goes down with an injury or is, significantly hampered in some way, the market is going to completely flip, or it's going to completely swing in one way. Once again, this example of the market lacking information like this is pretty rare. It's most likely going to happen in smaller sports, but there are definitely examples of it in bigger sports. The fourth instance where CLV doesn't matter as much is when arbs are involved. So those people who don't know arbitrage betting, it's when people are betting two sides of an equation of a sporting game, and no matter who wins, they're going to win money. So for example, Novak Djokovic versus Rafael Nadal, they've been able to secure odds on both sides that no matter how the outcome of the game plays out, they are going to make money no matter what. For more information about arbitrage betting, I'll chuck a link up here. So the reason why this affects the closing price is because, let's just say that earlier in the week, you got a good position on Novak Djokovic, 2.0 for example. And as the market became more efficient, as people bet into that market, your Novak Djokovic bet went from 2.0 all the way down to 1.7, which means that Rafael Nadal's odds have gone from, let's say at the time they might have been something around 1.8, and they've gone all the way up to probably something around 2.3, 2.4. Now, you can now bet Rafael Nadal at 2.3, 2.4, and you've already got that bet on Novak Djokovic. So to create the arbitrage bet, you now bet Rafael Nadal. Now, by betting Rafael Nadal, depending on how much money you put down on that, that could affect the market. That could create a closing line close to the start of the game that doesn't represent the true odds of the actual outcome. So if you're a big bettor, you could then go into Pinnacle or a Sharps sports book and absolutely smash Rafael Nadal's odds down to 2.2, let's just say as an example, when really his true efficient price was something a lot closer to 2.3, 2.4 or something like that. So those were my 4 examples of times where CLV matters a lot less. But it is important to state that 90 to 99% of the time, somewhere in there, CLV is extremely important and it's needed to win from sports betting 90 to 99% of the time. These instances I've talked about where CLV doesn't matter or matters a lot less can be very rare instances, especially the last 3 examples I mentioned, such as the market lacking info, arbitrage betting, and market fakes. But thanks for watching the video, everyone. Please make sure if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to our channel. Catch you next time.